Welcome to Choreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and we are doing the Finlandia Trophy 2025 recap in this episode. Of course, that is the final Grand Prix qualifier in this year's Grand Prix series.
We made it.
Yeah, I mean, we're there. We're going to the final. It's all locked in now. We're also going to be talking a little bit at the end about Warsaw Cup, which happened at the same time, which we didn't actually watch, but we know the results from, so we can talk about that a little bit. But I think a lot happened at Finlandia.
A lot of controversy feels like not the right word. Concerns, deep emotions, particularly around dance scoring.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look back at this event, it's going to be a pretty great women's event, a pretty not so great men's event, kind of like last week at Skate America, a pretty decent pairs event with some really nice outcomes, and then an ice dance event that I think has kind of the predictable outcome, but numbers that are lower than were expected, and it caused a real stir in the ice dance community. Everybody has feelings about it. We have feelings about it. So why don't we talk about it?
Let's start there. I think that it's really not surprising at all that Laurence Fournier-Boudre and Guillaume Cizeron took first place at this. I know that they are a very new team, but they are Lolo and Guy. We know that they are on a trajectory. Like, it is very obvious that they are moving towards winning Europeans. It's very, very likely that they will, and absolutely contend for all the medals at the Olympics, but we'll see what happens when we get there. But the Grand Prix final is going to be a little preview for us to see how they do when everybody who's really medal contenders gets all together and hangs out. However, that said, they were not thrilled with their scores, as were most of the skaters not happy with their scores.
With Guillaume, so this is, of course, only the third time that we've seen them compete as a team. And their first scores at French Masters were inane.
They were astronomical, and then they also changed their rhythm dance between French Masters and Grand Prix de France.
Right. So when they came into Grand Prix de France, they come in with a new short program, and they have that absolutely lovely free dance.
It's incredible.
And they have extraordinary quality, as you would expect from two people who were very good in their previous partnerships and are very good together, including one guy who is the reigning Olympic champion and is often thought of as one of the best male ice dance partners of all time. So you expect good things. But we were also sort of expecting truckloads of points to get dumped on them every time they appear, because when we saw them at Grand Prix de France, their numbers right out the gate at the very beginning of the Grand Prix were absolutely massive. And it led to a lot of conversation in the fandom about, like, what kind of numbers were we already seeing at the beginning of the season that were just absolutely monstrous? And were they fair numbers, or did it feel like the ISU and home cooking and whatever, like, already just kind of like pushing this team right to the forefront? Because it just felt like that from the beginning. It's like, it felt like everybody decided, oh, this is going to be the gold medalist this year. And then after Grand Prix de France, where so many of the numbers just kind of felt out of the pocket, the rest of the Grand Prix feels like it's had, I'm going to call it a course correction, but you can take issue with the word correction, because overcorrection can go into it as well.
Yeah.
But since that event, we've seen the numbers across a number of the disciplines kind of flatten out a little bit. And not always. I mean, there's some really big things in some of the other disciplines, but particularly ice dance has trended down since then. And a lot of teams are not getting the scores that they're used to getting. And in particularly the last couple of events, you've had the person who apparently is like the head of the ISU technical committee has been the caller for Skate America and Finlandia, and was very, very strict. And so you're getting, like, no teams are getting above a 2 in midline, and lots of other ice dance elements that are just not getting scored above like 1s and 2s, including the top teams. And I've got a lot of mixed feelings about that. But clearly after the rhythm dance, and there's some other quibbles with the scoring in that, your first place, Fournier-Boudre and Cizeron, and your second place, the Canadians, Gillis and Poirier, both were vocal in interviews and in the press conference that they were not happy with the scoring or the state of ice dance.
And I understand where you're coming from in terms of they're the top teams and maybe sometimes they get overscored. That is totally fair.
Maybe.
fine. They get overscored. However,
and that's fair for Chalk and Bates. And
it's fair for a lot of teams.
And a lot of teams who get underscored when they should be scored better.
100% agreed. However, I also totally agree with everyone who is upset, because if all these teams, I mean, we're talking all of them, none of them can get over a level 2, that tells me there is some really poor communication happening between the judging and the teams that are training these ice dance couples, as well as the skaters themselves. Because there is no way that you can tell me that it's perfectly clear what equates to a level 1, 2, 3, or 4, and everyone just says level 2 is enough. It doesn't make any sense. So if that's the case, what's wrong with that communication? What is not being told? Like, hey, this is what we expect. And we've seen this over and over and over again, where it's that, like, there's these arbitrary judgments as to what is happening in ice dance. And I know we're super redundant with this. We are not ice dance experts. So I think that has to be added here.
And it's a real struggle when we watch 10 teams do the midline step sequence or do the choreo sequence, and they all look great. And we're listening to Mark talk about him, and we're not hearing anything other than, oh, you did a thing, you got an edge, or whatever. And it's just unidentifiable.
Right. And I am so grateful to Mark Henready today. He did a brilliant job trying to, I think, assist every viewer in at least somewhat understanding what was going on, because it's obvious this is becoming a recurring theme. And so do I think that the top teams being grumpy that they're not getting scored the way they used to be, or occasionally get overscored too? Sure, I think that's a little much, but at the same time, I don't disagree with them in this is an actual problem, and ice dance is 100% suffering for it, because it gets harder and harder to understand why anything is happening, why these scores are what they are, why the teams are in the placements that they are. It just gets more vague as we go. And I'm going to pass it off to you, because I know you have very strong feelings about the fact that it is a sport, and I'm going to lead you in with that.
I think figure skating in general suffers from the problem of being, we call it figure skating. Lots of other places in the world, it's referred to as artistic skating.
Yes.
And so people lean into, well, it's the art, but it is a sport. And there are lots of people who care much more about the beauty of the sport than they do care about the athletic side of it. And I understand that aesthetically, like whatever it is that you find appealing. But at the end of the day, it is a judged sport. So it is both a combination of technical and subjective artistic appreciation. And judged sports, by their nature, are going to be divisive, because the fan base is going to have disagreements with what they enjoyed versus what they see something get scored at.
Of course.
Ice dance, though, is the worst of all of those.
Ice dance is kind of the worst.
It is an extremely beautiful sport.
Yes.
That has always been more subjective than understandable. When I first saw ice dance, way before I was a fan, but when I saw it, in the 90s, it was essentially incomprehensible to me. When I would watch it with my mom back in the 90s, the 6.0 system never made a lick of sense to me. And when we started watching it together in the aughts, and you were starting to really explain things to me, ice dance was the hardest thing for me to get on board with. Because while I could watch some of the stuff and appreciate it, I could never understand how the sport worked at all. And I think that over the years, as the scoring system has changed, there has been this move to try to make things more quantifiable, more built around rules and understandable ways that a fan at home can recognize what's going on, and that the scoring isn't just vibes based. But so much of what I hear in the conversation about things now is this dichotomy, and sometimes this overlap where people are like, oh, it's all just vibes, or it's all just non-understandable rules that nobody can comprehend. And sometimes people are saying kind of at the same time that the judging is just whatever the judges want to give, and that it's too rules heavy and too technical, and it takes away from the artistic element of it. And I feel like they're kind of asking for different things while they're trying to rectify or reconcile those different issues. And I don't have an answer for it, because one, not an ice dance expert, and not a judge, and not an ice dancer. I have a little bit of a struggle sometimes when I see, your top teams in the world sit in a press conference and complain while they're winning. And I appreciate that they are sort of speaking up for a lot of the lower teams who are not able to do that. And
yeah, they have the microphone.
Yeah, we've talked a lot over the last few episodes about saying, like, say like a Brody in Somerville who watch themselves get just completely non-understandable low scores at several of the events, or teams like Guinard and Fabry, who have been one of the best teams in the world for years, and then after last year's decline, just can't seem to get a higher score than they used to. And we saw them sort of actively protest in the kiss and cry over it. The stuff that happened here, and we're talking a lot about the bigger issue without digging in on what individually happened here.
But I think it's important too, because I do feel like it's a contentious issue.
Yeah.
And it's one that we're going to keep seeing, because nothing can really be changed other than ideally better communication happening so that the teams at least understand what they're not doing, what they're missing, until the next ISU meetings where rules will change
next June.
So we're going to go through this Olympics without any actual rules changes. My hope is just that we can see an effort being made to make sure that teams understand why they are getting these levels, what is happening that they are doing wrong, because that to me is critical.
Well, and a big part of the argument that both skaters and fans have is just a lack of consistency.
Yes.
There is no consistency in the judging, and that we've been complaining about this entire season.
Oh, it's awful.
In every discipline, but particularly in ice dance, where there are times where it feels like some teams are suppressed, some teams are lifted, and even when they're very good, sometimes they're getting scores that feel kind of outlandish. And then we have the handful that are making big moves really quickly that feel very earned. When we talk about Zingis and Kolesnik, I mean, that's going to be part of the conversation with them as a team that has risen rapidly based on their quality. And this is a sport that so often seems to hold people in their place until it's their turn. And this year we're seeing a lot of that get shaken up. And I think that because ice dance has been so stereotypically governed by that hierarchy, when you've got a season where it's shaking up a little bit more than you'd expect leading into the Olympics, I think that also, on one level, as a fan, I like that because I don't want it to feel preordained. You know,
I agree with that.
I hate it when it feels preordained. I want it to matter what people did on the ice that day. But you want the scores to be consistent. You want the rules to make sense. You want the fan at home to have some idea what's going on, rather than all of us ending the events with a massive distaste in our mouth.
I think that's the key here. It's like we're getting very, very heated into our feelings.
What the whole fandom has, you know? And I think that it's hard to talk about all of this stuff without having to reconcile it with a challenging scoring system that can make appreciating the sport difficult.
Yes. It makes it extremely uncomfortable as a fan, and also like extremely challenging for a new fan to embrace, because if they're watching Smart and Deek's Dune 2 and they see this beautiful cinematic program, it's not new that people see something they love and are really drawn to and that team doesn't win. I've been watching ice dance for a long time, decades. This type of controversy of the art versus the technical is not new. The difference here is the inconsistency and the lack of transparency. I want to say that's different. That's been the case forever. But I feel like we go in these cycles of however many years the judging system has to change, because it gets so convoluted again that they have to wipe it clean and be like, okay, let's start over with something else. And then you go for so long until that one gets totally screwed again. And then they start over again. And I know that it's always in an effort to make it more fair and to have things that can be judged, because just saying that seems like the best one to me is not judging. That's why we now have these. We have levels and technical. And yes, some of it is ridiculous. And some of it is, it's all made up anyway. Like it is very.
Ice dance is fake, as people like to say online.
It is. And I agree with what you said, that you can usually tell, even as a fairly novice viewer, who the best, like maybe top 6, 7 teams are,
Sure.
like as you're watching it. You might not know why, but you can tell that they are just better. But amongst those, it's a crapshoot. Like it's toss it in the air, and I don't know what do you
if there's
what do you
no
feel
mistakes,
today?
if everybody's clean,
Exactly.
and oftentimes the errors that are getting picked up by the judges are almost imperceptible to the layman. There's times watching this where Mark Henretti is commenting, oh, like breaks in rotation and twizzles, or slight footing changes or whatever. And sometimes we can see those obviously, and sometimes we can't. But we'll see levels get lost. But we've had plenty of competitions over the last couple of years where we have seen the top teams make obvious mistakes in things like the twizzle and then not seen it reflected in the levels or in the GOE. The team that I think of most with that is Gilles and Poirier, because there were at least twice, I think last year, where they had very obvious twizzle problems that didn't get called, didn't get reviewed, and that we watched at home, watched them break rotation and get out of sync and then get level 4s on it. And they're not the only team by any means. It's just the one that
sure,
I
the
think
one that
about.
comes to mind.
So there's oftentimes a feeling of like the bigger teams get a break on some of those things sometimes.
Of course.
Right?
I mean, that's every discipline. We're probably going to talk about it with our winner of the women's competition and Mona Chiba. Like, I love Mona Chiba, but she does have a technique and that often just doesn't get called on a cue or an under rotation that you can see in the slow-mo, but
they never catch and review. Yeah.
And not never, but less often.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a brilliant skater. That's not taking anything away from her.
Yeah.
It's not like she's doing it on every jump.
But sure. But you can also look at things like, the judges are always looking for speed and ice coverage and all this stuff. And you can look at Chalk and Bates, who have been slow as molasses so far this season.
They have.
And they're beautiful technicians and they have great artistry, and you may or may not like them. I'm a big fan of their work and have been for years. But I also look at these programs, and particularly that free skate just feels extremely slow right now. And they're getting those like astronomical marks. And I don't think they're totally earned in those places, because there are other teams that are moving faster, covering more ground and doing things more aggressively in a way that I think is more entertaining. And again, it's like there's that world champion bump that you get. Other people will say that applies to Alyssa Liu or whatever, so it's a sport that's just compounded with problems of subjectivity and game playing and vote trading and years of corruption, and you can't escape the baggage of that.
You cannot.
And if you are a new fan who's coming in fresh, who doesn't know about any of that stuff, it's been a long time since I was that person.
Yep.
But as somebody who was a huge Ashley Wagner fan in her competitive era and constantly looking at her scores, making the same face that Ashley was in the kiss and cry, and now being able to recognize more, she had some flat edges and she had some problems and,
many a flutz.
Yeah, many a flutz over time. I can get a little bit more of that now. But in that era, I couldn't figure out why my fave was just constantly getting knocked down. And it's tough. It's very frustrating. But we've gone on for 20 minutes about all of that. Why don't we dig into actual ice dance here?
The one thing I do want to finish this off with is to be like, it's an acknowledgement. What you have just listened to is 20 minutes of what has been a 2-day conversation about this. And I'm sure that if anyone is actually listening to this podcast themselves, they have also had these at least discussions in their own head or with their friends online or friends in person, if you're very lucky and have friends that actually watch figure skating with you. But we're with you and we're feeling that tension of how do we improve this situation? Even just for fans like us to see, I don't know what impact we can have, but I am glad that the discussion is happening, because it's a reminder that this always needs to evolve and improve, because there's obvious problems and we're all talking about it. So it's not nothing.
If you're on the Instagram, I would suggest going to fs.skatingstand's post about this. Haley, who's been on the show. Hey, Haley.
Hi, Haley.
She has a really good post about this issue, kind of summing up a lot of it, covering things that have been talked about both in the press conferences, other podcasts, in fan spaces. She's got tweets, or are they called skeets on Blue Sky? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. Like posts about it in various social media where people have discussed this stuff. And the feelings are strong and run a number of different directions as far as what people would like to see the sport do. But very clearly, there's parts of it that aren't working. But if there's another issue with all of this, it's not just inconsistent scoring. It's also incompetency. And numerous times throughout this season, in various ways, we have things that have felt like incompetency. And I really hate using words like that because it feels very uncharitable to people who are probably working very hard and trying their best, whether they are judges or technicians at these various events. But it's like the Chinese team in juniors that did a quad twist that you almost never see in competition, and then it got called a triple and never got fixed.
Yep.
And at this event we'll talk about in a bit, you have a team who got their wrong music played during their rhythm dance with the Toshlers, which completely screwed up their performance. Hard to see for the home person because they're pros and they handled it, but a complete disaster for them, and they were really upset, and understandably so. And technical falls out at some of the events where Daiwei Dai last week got left on the ice for like 16 or 20 minutes or something while a technical problem was happening, and they should have restarted the whole warm-up based on the rules, and they didn't do it, and all kinds of other issues like that. There's just, this season has been riddled with little problems like that are embarrassing and frustrating, and they're annoying for the home viewer, but for the competitors, it has to be a nightmare.
It does. I'm frustrated as well. But instead of focusing on that, I think you're right. We need to move on to the actual competition.
Yeah, let's do something here with ice dance as we start this off. Normally, we kind of run through each of the teams or skaters by their placement.
Sure.
I want to start off here by just talking about the top three in the rhythm dance. I want to separate rhythm from free dance.
Okay.
Because I think one of the first things to talk about here is Fournier Boudre are in first after the rhythm dance, but they do have what feels like a judging mistake.
They do.
So,
again, another one of these mistakes that is weird.
Right. And this is from, again, the head technical caller for the ISU. I may get the words wrong on this because I don't have the notes on it right in front of me, but I know that basically, like, at the beginning of their program, a piece at the beginning of the skate that I don't really think is an element. I think it's just choreography. Gets called by the technical caller as a choreographic sequence. I don't think it's the character step, but it gets called as something that it isn't and isn't intended to be. And in particular, somewhere in that, as I understand it, again, not an ice dance expert, I think they actually go in reverse at one point during it because, again, just choreographic sequence, and that's not allowed in the element that it was called as, but that element was actually placed later in their program. And so when they got to it, it basically got called like an invalid element or something. Basically, like, if you had the layout in front of you, you would know that particular element was later in the program.
Right.
But the caller looked at it and decided, well, all of the fixins of whatever that thing is are happening on the ice right now. Even if it's not intended to be that, I'm going to call it as that, which doesn't feel right.
No.
And is understandable why that team would be upset about getting a downgrade or invalid or an exclamation point, whatever those things are, and losing points over it. So from that standpoint, I can completely understand why Fournier Boudre and Cicerone would be upset about the way that got scored.
100%.
With that in mind, they are still in first after the rhythm dance. They
by 3/10.
3/10, just barely. They get a 79.89. That is a personal best. Again, this team is only in its third.
Yeah, only second international.
Second international. So really, it's better than they got at the first one when they were wildly scored, right? So take that however you will. But then when we look at second, we get Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier from Canada. And this, I think, is the best we've seen that rhythm dance.
For sure. And granted, again, it's the only the second time we've seen it.
Only the second time we've seen it. Right.
But it's significantly improved.
Much, much better. And so they're coming in here with a 79.56, which is, like you said, just 0.34 behind Fournier Boudre. So very, very tight with them. But I also think they thought they were underscored or that, and they were definitely getting the ones and twos and all of those elements, kind of how everybody else was. But I will say I was less impressed with Fournier Boudre and Cicerone's rhythm dance here. To me, it felt a little loose in places. And while it's quite good, obviously, I thought Piper and Paul's was better.
I agree with you.
I thought the rhythm dance was better.
Yeah.
And then rounding out the top three, and maybe, I don't know that it's necessarily a surprise.
I would call it at least some tiny surprise.
I think that everybody kind of knew who the top two would be, depending on. But
I think there were like three teams vying for that third spot.
But Amelia Zingas and Vadim Kolesnik from the US, they're third in the rhythm. They take third overall. They get a 78.51 in the rhythm. I don't believe that's a season's best. So I think they've actually done better than that.
They've broken 80, I believe.
So if they'd gotten a season's best, they would have actually been on top of all of this. And to my mind, their rhythm dance was the best of those three.
I agree with you. And I know that's probably controversial. And I know that they're, again, not an ice dance expert, in the rhythm dance specifically on this day.
Mm-hmm.
My personal picks would have had them first, Gilles and Poirier second, and Fournier, Boudre, and Cizeron third in the rhythm dance.
Yeah, agreed. That's how I would have had that place as well.
I just think Amelia and Vadim did an incredible job in that rhythm dance. They had the best speed for sure. Their material is just so strong. They handled everything so precisely and perfectly. I didn't see a blip. They had the best ice coverage easily.
Mm-hmm. I think you could just flip this whole, in the rhythm, this whole group. If you take away here are the best teams in the world or whatever, and just take it to what people did on the day, I think Zingas and Kolesnik should have been on top. Somebody in the comments might pop in and say we're pandering to the American audience here, because that's happened recently.
Oh, no, because I mean, if you want to be the bias, I would always have Olivia Smart and Tim Deacon first. Yeah. That is the truth pretty much all the time. Yeah, I love that.
Just for the thing that, you're
just as a pure fan, unobjectively.
But here in the rhythm, I think that Zingas and Kolesnik have definitely one of the best rhythm dances this season in a theme that is plagued with kind of mediocre programs and just people struggling to make programs work with material that maybe doesn't suit them very well. Their material suits them perfectly, and they absolutely nail it.
Yes.
And I just think that of those three teams, they just looked the strongest. I don't know, maybe it's just that as a younger team, that theme suits them better. They embodied it in a way that just really, really worked. But again, I thought Gilles and Poirier's rhythm was terrific, and I thought it was a lot better than the first time that we saw it. So solid stuff.
So are we good to move into the free dance?
Let's move into the free dance.
Okay, because if we're talking about what happens on the day, period.
Yeah.
Fournier and Boudre have a gorgeous free dance.
Yeah,
it is
beautiful.
Absolutely divine. They are beautiful. It's incredible. On this day, I would absolutely have given the edge to Piper and Paul.
Absolutely.
I think they should have won the free dance, and I think they should have won it overall.
Yeah, I was a little lukewarm on the Vincent program when we saw it last time. And here, I thought it worked so much better. The mood, the lyricality of it, the energy of it, everything about it, I thought was stronger. And I thought they skated it wonderfully.
Yeah, I know that she had one issue in the twizzle that I get was going to lose them points, but they gave her, I believe it was in the free and not the rhythm dance, but they gave her a bass.
Yeah, she got bass. I thought that was in the rhythm, but yeah,
it might be.
But somewhere, Piper got a bass on a twizzle, and I was like, what?
No, and I mean, Mark seemed baffled by it too in the commentary as well. Okay, yes, she broke rotation, but bass? Really?
It's pretty astonishing. And there's just several places in these scores where there are times where it just feels like, are you just punching buttons randomly? Like what's happening here?
Yeah.
And like I said, there are times where I've seen Gilles and Poirier get away with messes and twizzles and still get fours and great GOE. That's not the case here. I thought mostly they looked good. And even though they might have minor bobbles, the way they got scored on them was insanely harsh. And while Fournier, Boudre, and Cizeron's program in the free, it's probably closer to my personal taste, just stylistically.
Oh, yeah.
I love the modern dance quality of it. I really enjoy the music choice. I like the way that it builds. I do think it leans away from bigger lift elements and stays more subtle, which isn't necessary. I like a mix, and I think that's something that Zingas and Kolesnik do really well. But overall, evaluating on the day, like you said, I thought that Gilles and Poirier were better in the free and probably should have won this event.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the whole event combined, they were very strong in both programs. They always talk about having the moment, like the one that you're going to take away from every competition. And to me, they had the moment. They finished that Vincent program and it was just breathtaking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, this is what this program is supposed to look like. This is getting closer to what the final form of this is going to be. And it's absolutely lovely. And it felt like that perfect combination of the subtlety of movement that you see with Guillaume and Lolo and the bold, big moves of Zingis and Kolesnik.
Yeah.
So I think that they just embodied everything that you'd want. And while I understand and cannot argue that Fournier, Boudre, and Cizerone's program was, I mean, it's always a moment when they're doing that program.
Yeah.
Like, it's just powerful. But
It is.
I just don't think it had the same gravity that it did in France.
Well, I think when you have those two programs and Zingis and Kolesnik's back to back to back, and not for nothing, Dune 2 from Smart and Deke ahead of that,
which was very, very good.
All of those other free dances have arcs. They have character moments and changes and flow so that you feel like there's a full story with different levels of emotion. And if there is a criticism that I have for Fournier, Boudre, and Cizerone's, again, absolutely beautiful free dance, it's that it's kind of one note. The music builds and changes, but emotionally what they're kind of portraying on the ice doesn't actually seem to change and evolve. It feels very much in one particular vibe and stays there. It's still a gorgeous piece of work, but when I watch those other programs, I end up feeling a bit more because I feel like I'm getting a full story, going a full arc. And like I said, first time I saw that Vincent program from Piper and Paul, it didn't do a whole lot for me. And this time I felt the impact of it. This time I felt like I was really getting that whole experience. And whereas before, where I thought that Zingis and Kolesnik kind of should have won the rhythm, I think third in the free makes perfect sense.
100%. And on a different day, I think Olivia and Tim's Dune 2 program, because they landed in fourth here, I think that is a better program. Not going to like sugarcoat that.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that Zingis and Kolesnik's Romeo and Juliet is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, it is a fantastic piece of work.
And they were a little tight in places on it here.
Yes.
You could tell the nerves of being podium possible.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, because like the rhythm dance, it just felt free. And I think that was what was so special about it, is like they just went hard the whole time. Whereas I could feel that sense of we could be on a podium, we could make the Grand Prix final. You could even kind of see it on Amelia's face whenever it was about to start. They handled it amazingly well, but it didn't have that same freedom that the rhythm did. Whereas I understand why Olivia and Tim land in fourth here, mostly because they had some little errors here and there, especially Tim had a problem in the Twizzles in the Dune program that held them back. But there's a 4-point difference between Zingis and Kolesnik and Smart and Deke. In my heart of hearts, I wish Olivia and Tim could have made that podium, because I just love them so much. And I really think that they just are so special. But I'm thrilled for Amelia and Vadim, because I cannot believe that they are going to the Grand Prix final, and it has been very deserved this season.
I remember towards the end of last season, we had an event where they suddenly made like a cognitive leap on the ice, you know, for lack of a better term for it. And it was the first time I'd watched them and didn't think they were just a team that had a lot of tricks.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, they were a very entertaining, very acrobatic team, but I didn't feel a lot of emotional depth. And then something changed and something started to really click and really start to work. And this whole season, I've been so impressed with them. And it really does make an interesting case in the U.S. ice dance, where for the longest time, you would have, you know, Chalk and Bates are obviously number one, and you would think of Carrera and Ponomarenko as your number two team. But
Christina just got her citizenship.
Which is a big deal. So that really, that answers that question of like, is the Olympics possible for that team? Well, it definitely is. But Zingis and Kolesnik have done way better this season.
Much better.
And them making it to the Grand Prix final very much changes the conversation. And having listened to one of the live run-through episodes where they interviewed the U.S., I forget what the guy's title is, but a guy from the U.S. Fed was explaining how the U.S. Fed makes its decisions about who makes it to the Olympic team, and how it is about placement over time, and how the bigger events like the Grand Prix events and things like Four Continents or whatever are weighted, you know, kind of heavier, but it's not about score. They don't take into account, at least by what he said that their standards are for it, they don't take into account what numbers you score, because event to event, that can be wildly different.
Yeah.
What matters is your placement. And if we're looking at that, Zingis and Kolesnik have 2 podium placements on the Grand Prix and are going to the Grand Prix final. And that just looks really, really strong for them. So a huge come up for that team. Anyway, total scores just on those top three. Fournier, Boudre, and Cicerone get a 204.18 total. Compared to what they got at Grand Prix de France,
it's 8 points less.
It's 8 points less. That probably feels like a kick in the teeth to them. But of course, this is a team that has only competed 3 times. There's very little baseline for it.
There is, but I do want to point out that technically Guillaume had a small fall in the rhythm dance in Grand Prix de France.
Good point.
So they got 8 points less here without a fall. So that is interesting.
Yes. And the first time that we've seen stuff like that happen, where people will have a better skate and get a lower score.
Yeah.
That's happened several times this season.
It has.
So Piper and Paul get a 202.11. So they're just 2 points behind them. And again, I would have flip-flopped those positions. And then Zingis and Kolesnik get 196.02. I think they were really close to 200 or hit 200.
They, I thought, tipped over 200 at their last Grand Prix. I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah. But regardless, for them, the kiss and cry moment where they realize they're on the podium and that they've qualified for the Grand Prix final is really great, and is one of the highlights for me of this event, is just seeing the joy on their faces, and particularly Amelia, because she's beside herself. And the interview they did with Golden Skate afterwards, talking about their elation and what this means to them, I think was really wonderful as well. Very, very excited for this team, but we should probably keep cruising through the rest of ice dance, huh?
Yeah, let's just talk quickly about everybody else because I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Yeah.
Maya and Alex Shibatani landed in 5th right behind Olivia Smart and Tim Deek. This was their second competition of the season. Technically, everything they got were personal bests, but they were only marginally ahead of where they had been at NHK Trophy. So they did look improved. I will absolutely say both of their programs definitely looked better. So they're making progress. We'll see how the rest of the season goes.
I thought that the DDR program, the rhythm dance, is still fun, but kind of devoid of any kind of real emotion or character in a lot of ways, but it's well skated. Their free dance is beautiful. And I think it looked
amazing on Maya.
It looked amazing on Maya. They looked much improved on it. And overall, I think they looked a lot better than we saw last time with them. But if anybody was expecting them to make like a wild jump at this event, it did not happen. They were actually 6th in the free after the Georgians. So yeah, I mean, they come out here with a 185.68. So you're still seeing that look on their faces in the kiss and cry of they're not being rewarded for the return. They're being kind of placed in the middle of the pack based on what they're doing out there. I think that when we talk about the Georgians with Davis and Smolkin, this is a team that has improved so much over the last year or two, but their rhythm dance, I don't want to say it's been ruined, but they've been changing that pretty much every single time.
Yeah.
The middle section of music has changed pretty much every time that we've seen them. And they've just have not been able to seem to like land on the right music in the middle. But at their first Grand Prix assignment, I thought that it actually worked really well and it was finally like coming together. But I guess they got feedback that it was too low energy in the middle and it needed to be like jumped up. So they've got this Offspring program, and the song Come Out and Play is now in the middle of it between two pieces of Pretty Fly for a White Guy. And the Come Out and Play in this rhythm dance is slowed down like several beats per minute. And if you know the song, it's excruciating.
It sounds like someone playing an actual like vinyl record too slow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's pitch corrected so that it's not dropped in pitch, which happens when you slow down tape or record or whatever. But the tempo is so lethargic. And even though they're skating the program well, the use of that music, that edit of that music is terrible. So really, really doesn't work. However, pretty great free dance.
Their free dance was really lovely. They did a wonderful job.
There's some really beautiful curve lifts and choreo slide elements and stuff in that program that I really enjoy. It particularly shows off the steadiness from Gleb, but I think that free dance reflects stylistically where they want to go, what they want to do, and it looks pretty good on them.
Moving us forward, the wonderful Finnish team of Yuko Orihara and Juho Pyrinen landed 7th here, which is not a bad placement for them. Obviously thrilled the heck out of the Finnish crowd, which was wonderful to see. They were a blast. They're always a blast. I think they skated better here than they did at their previous Grand Prix assignment, for sure. It's always just wonderful to see them. They are the most fun.
Yeah, they're delightful.
They are the most fun ever.
Yeah,
I love them.
I like that Mark kind of said that they're really not skating for points or the judges. They are the entertainment team.
Yes.
And I'm sure that they would love to get more points and get higher in the rankings, but it feels less imperative to them than putting on a show.
My one comment is I just need them to get the opportunity to go to the Olympics, and she needs her citizenship. So if anyone's listening, please help, because I need them to become internet famous in a much bigger way.
Yes.
Because especially Yuka, but them together, like I just want to see them posting new ice dances on TikTok and Instagram like every week and have them get millions of views, because they are so entertaining and fun. And even if it's just little like 15-second segments that are just so delightful, it's right there. It's right there. It has to happen.
Yeah.
We need them in our lives.
Agreed.
For a long time.
Now, their training mates, the Toshler siblings, Natalie Teslarova and Philip Toshler, they get hosed here.
Completely. And I'm sending every gosh darn bit of love and hope and positivity and support and all these things to them, because if Natalie hadn't had already enough of a really tough time right now,
over the last few weeks,
and she's getting tons of support, thankfully, and people are being extremely kind, and they should be. They come here, and I'm just gonna let you describe it because you actually read what they talked about, because they get screwed.
Well, so essentially, when the Toshlers get to this event and they go to do their practices, so ahead of time, you're supposed to upload your music, your updated music, because as we can tell, those programs get updated all the time. So they have to be updated each time. And the link that was sent to them didn't work. And so they had problems with it ahead of time. They weren't able to submit. So then they go into the practice and they were like, hey, you have our wrong music. We need to give you the new music. And when they went to do the practice, the wrong music was played. So they were still getting the wrong thing. And it's maybe not apparent immediately, because I think the changes in it come later into the music. But that was supposed to have been corrected. They had talked to the technical team while they were in practices. You have the wrong thing. We've submitted the right thing. Here's what it is. Should have been taken care of. They go out to perform their rhythm dance, and I think halfway through, they discover that it's the wrong edit. And it's the wrong edit in such a way that there are like 3 8-count sections that are just not in that edit that gets played. So essentially, they get a third or halfway through their program, and they have to start adjusting what they're doing to an older edit that their choreography has been changed around and it's different. To the credit of this team, I saw people online say that at home, they didn't know that had happened. We watched it not in real time. So we saw it after the fact, and we knew that problem had happened. And so we were sort of watching for them communicating with each other on the ice, because we knew they're essentially talking during the performance to say, it's the wrong thing, adjust to this or whatever. They're changing it on the fly to make it work. But even knowing that, I thought that they skated it really nicely.
They did.
But they are so upset at the end of it. Natty's coming off the ice just so freaked out because, you just showed up at your last Grand Prix and they played the wrong music, and now your choreo feels completely off and your whole performance changes. And they're looking at the judges and just like, miming X's at them and stuff and being like, you screwed us. The technical team screwed us. And this sport doesn't have a mechanism to fix things like that, because technically speaking, they could have stopped the program, skated up to the judges and said, you have our wrong music. You're putting us at a disadvantage because that's not the right thing. And it could have maybe been fixed and started over. And we've seen single skaters do stuff like that before. But for an ice dance team, you're screwed, because the flow is everything. And no matter what happens, it's going to interrupt your performance and mess it up. So they end up in 6th after the rhythm dance. And I can't say what it would have been if they had the right music, but it clearly upset them and it clearly shook them up. And that's a really hard way to go into the next day. And I think you saw the impact of that affect them going into the free dance.
They just looked a little tight and a little more reserved than usual. It wasn't great. And it sucks. And I feel for them.
And I still think that, I really like the new costumes for the Matrix program. I thought those were better. And there's so much of that program I really enjoy, especially as, somebody who I saw The Matrix 8 times in the theater, like when it came out in like 98 or 99. And so like I've got an affinity for that film. I know its thematics very, very well. And the things that they're doing in the storytelling throughout that piece reflect the film and its themes and its iconic moments super well. And yeah, there's a couple of places where it's a little bit more mechanical. There's a sequence that Natty loses her balance just a little bit and things almost looks like his face gets too close to a blade in a transition that gets a little scary. That could have been the camera angle. It's kind of hard to tell from what we were watching, but regardless, not the performance that they wanted, and it dropped them. They were 10th in the free, 8th overall, 172.95, not the score that they were looking for, but you could just see them kind of at the end of it, just take it like essentially this event was a wash for them. And it sucks. But it has been really nice to see how much the Finnish crowd has embraced them, because they're a Czech team that now trains in Finland, and they've been very obviously super tight with Yuka and Juho, and also with Tequila and Versluis. And, just that whole like crowd of people seems so supportive and wonderful. And the Finns have really embraced them, which is a great thing to see.
It is. Keeping us moving, because I know we've been spending pretty much the whole episode so far on Ice Dance. 9th and 10th place, we saw repeats from last week. Una Brown and Gage Brown had a problem in the rhythm dance. The Brown siblings did, and that kept them in 9th there. But
Gage lost like a whole twizzle.
Yeah, it was not
There's
great.
something worth noting too, that a lot of the skaters talked about how there was really soft ice at this rink. And that makes a difference in the way your blade works. And a lot of older competitors are so used to shifting from one place to the other and the environments being different that they adapt to things easier sometimes just by experience. And sometimes younger teams will have problems with that because they just don't have the experience to adjust to it on the fly. I don't know if that's had any impact here, but I saw several times people have pretty uncharacteristic issues. We saw it in pairs as well. It seemed like lots of times the guys were having problems. Anytime additional, weight or something was added to their blade, it's like they would just kind of lose their footing. And that's what it kind of looked like with Gage here. And I know that was crushing for them, both scores wise and personally.
Yeah. And then in last place here, but still getting the opportunity to skate here, was the victory. The Baby Brits, Phoebe Becker and James Hernandez. I thought they looked lovely. I love their programs this season, particularly that free dance is so compelling.
Yeah, the Romeo and Juliet free dance is beautiful, but their rhythm is great too. They got added to this super last minute. They had almost no prep time between the travel and whatever. They may not have even gotten a full run through of their free dance before competing it here. So they came into this with kind of no expectation. This is just experience for them.
Absolutely.
As a team that is going to go to the Olympics in that secondary spot for the Brits. So this is just leading up to them being a next quadrennial team.
Exactly. Well, before we move on, I do want to mention, since now we officially know who the Grand Prix finalists are going to be, let's talk about them just real quick. Landing at the top qualifying position is Chalk and Bates. That's mostly due to their scores, because cumulatively across both Grand Prix assignments. Second, Fournier, Boudre, and Cizeron from France. Fear and Gibson are going to be there. They're in the third qualifying spot. Phyllis and Poirier right behind them. Allison Reed and Solius Ambrosivicius will make it in that fifth spot. And then Amelia Zingis and Vadim Kolesnik take the surprise sixth slot at the Grand Prix final.
Yeah, so I think 4 of these teams are obvious and 2 of these teams are surprises.
For sure.
And I think that's great because I'm such a huge fan of Reed and Ambrosivicius, and I really, really like Zingis and Kolesnik. So the 2 of those teams making here are pretty awesome.
I am sad that we weren't going to see Lejeune and Lagat there. They are the first alternates.
Still could happen. You never know.
It still could happen. You never know. That's true. Grenard and Fabry have to be having a lot of uncomfortable feelings about
being a second alternate for the Grand Prix final.
Yeah, that is definitely shocking.
Yeah, and Lapareva and Brousseau are the third alternate, and they were at Grand Prix final last year.
Yeah, all 3 of these teams were at Grand Prix final last year.
Yeah.
So it is definitely strange.
It's a real sea change. Yeah. But again, if there's a thing that I don't like about ice dance is how predictable it could feel like in the past. And so for it to have a Grand Prix final that doesn't feel as safe or predetermined, I think is pretty exciting. And we know from last year, I think it was last year, that, we saw like Piper and Paul have a fall in the rhythm dance, which wildly upset the balance of like kind of how things were going. So anything can happen. Any of these teams could falter or have the best day ever. So, and we'll talk about that next week when we do a Grand Prix final preview, and we'll get more into that. But yeah, very interesting final group that are headed to that event.
Okay, well, welcome back to a brand new episode. To anyone who looked at the chapters on this video or just skimmed ahead in the podcast, so that
the non-ice dance fans are finally back. They're like, yes, oh, here we are.
We're back. Okay, we're moving on to men's. I think the placements here are not shocking, except for the bronze medalist. But Yuma Kageyama taking gold makes sense. His score of 270.45, definitely lower than I would have expected.
Yeah, not the most fantastic performances from Yuma. He was third after the short program with an 88.16, pretty messy performance there. And then his free skate is a 182.29, which is a pretty solid number overall, but still not a perfect skate. Both of his programs are some of the best of the season.
Oh, for sure.
They're beautifully choreographed, a lot of personality, and have such an extraordinary quality in them typically. But there was a lot here that felt unsteady. He's got a couple of falls and places where it didn't come together as powerfully. So he comes away with that gold medal as we would have expected here, but certainly just not with the level of command that we would have expected.
I gotta admit, one of the things I was thinking about while watching his free skate, by the end of it, I'm like, you have the best program. Like, this is the best men's program to me. However, maybe don't count out Shun Sato for taking the Japanese title. It's not out of the question.
If Yuma skates like this at the Japanese Nationals, Shun could definitely beat him.
And I wonder how we keep talking about like score suppression. Will Japan, just so that, because Yuma is the one who has been he could really, it's very unlikely for him to beat Ilya Malinin, but on the right day he could.
Sure, he's the heir apparent.
Exactly.
Especially since Shoma Uno retired.
Yes.
Yuma's their top guy. And
they want to keep him as the top guy even if he has more mistakes. And I mean, Shun has been killing it. So I don't know. It makes me very curious to see going into Japanese Nationals. I mean, I know we still have the Grand Prix final with both of them. We'll see how that goes. But Yuma has been very inconsistent, beautiful, stunning skates. But Shun's got the arsenal of jumps and just much more whole, complete, steady program. So
even if he is not the delight on ice, if he's not the personality and the expression or whatever, like he's steady.
Yeah,
and he's been
rock.
Really, really consistent this season.
He has.
Somebody who's not been consistent at all this season, but looked better here was France's Adam Siam-Fa. He wins the short program with a 92.50. That's a season's best for him, and that is looking a lot more like the Adam of old. That is what we've been waiting to see from him, and his short program is terrific here. It's so strong, so artistic, thrills the crowd.
It's not perfect, but it is stellar.
The free skate is not quite as good.
It's a lot of hanging on.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't fall. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But I think maybe one of his jumps looks like it was landed comfortably. All the rest were either a step out or super far forward or any one of a number of things. But he fought for it. And it was not a failure by any stretch. And it was one of those, like, he still had a 256.98, got the silver medal, and reading his Golden Skate interview afterwards, he seemed happier, where he's like, I can see the progress being made. And he talked about how he's been training a lot in adversity, like if he's sick or if he didn't sleep well, or if trying to make sure that he can perform at any given time as needed, doing it early in the morning or late at night, just trying to get himself more confident in the sense of, this is what I do. I've got this. And I really find that to be like an interesting exercise to see, because he is known to be inconsistent. I worry sometimes that he's the guy who has to have adversity to perform really well, because he does so well with the comeback. Like after a bad skate, he'll have the incredible skate. And I want him to just be able to do that at any given time, and I'm sure he wants to as well.
Sure.
So maybe training himself, everything's a little bit of adversity. I don't know. I find it fascinating.
I feel like he's one of those guys who could probably use a little bit of sports psychology work just to help out with figuring that out. But whatever it is to get there, I think he feels like he's in a much healthier headspace in general. And his body looks like it's starting to respond more. It's just about getting that consistency and making it work and making two programs come together, because that often seems like the problem. But
absolutely.
But yeah, he grabs a silver here. The 256.98 is pretty far back from Yuma, and still those mid 200 numbers are not what you want to see from the best competitors out there, but still decent skates. I will say that I found a lot of the last men's free skates a little uncompelling. I think I was getting tired. There was one ahead of them that was better, and we'll get to it. But I do think that the surprise bronze placement of Canada's Steven Gogolev is really worth noting here, because it shouldn't be, I guess, that surprising, because he has been doing very well this season.
He's become much more consistent.
Yes. He's gotten his jumps under control. He's far more a technician than an artist, but
yes,
he's been working with Benoit Rochot, and you can tell that change has made a difference in him. There's a different kind of skater on the ice than we've seen in a while. And I think that hunt for the Olympic placement has made all of the Canadian men who've been competing much better this season.
Totally agree.
He was in second above Yuma after the short program with an 89.35, which is a pretty stellar performance from Gogo.
That's insane to think about. Like, if you wanted to say something to me at the beginning of this season that I would not have believed, that would be it. So good job, Steven Gogolev.
Yeah. And while he slips into third after the free, his free skate is only marginally behind Adam Salmonfaz. So he comes in here with a 253.61. That's a 3 and change behind Adam. So he's not far back there. Again, quite a ways back from Yuma after his stronger free skate. But all in all, I mean, Gogo going back to Canada with a medal around his neck, that has got to place him now as the front runner for the Canadian men.
I would think so, even though fourth place right behind him is Roman Sadovsky, his prime competition for that spot. And Roman had some problems in the short program, but his free skate was my favorite of the whole night.
Without question.
It was gorgeous.
That free skate performance here in Finlandia, to me, is the definitive men's performance.
It was so beautiful.
It is spectacular. And when you're looking at performance quality and how the jumps look, the way the crowd responds, I feel like the Finnish audience is a little more reserved. They really like to clap, but they don't like to stand. But they really seem to respond well to him. But I just felt like he brought so much ownership over that. You know, we've talked a lot about how like Gogolev is the jumper and Sadovsky is the performer. And they're both getting better about rounding out their performances. But Sadovsky here, that free skate is just so compelling. He's in such command over it. It suits him so well. The Claire de Lune and photograph combination is genius. It's such a great edit. He comes in about 10 points behind Gogo. So, you know, he's kind of back in the pack a little bit as far as scores wise go, but it is such a great performance. But those guys going 3-4 here is really great for the Canadians.
It's great and just continues to make Canadian nationals a really interesting competition.
And he does just edge out America's Jason Brown by what, like 0.12, I think. Jason, who is, you know, the master of the blade, essentially comes in just behind him here. And the story is that one, triple axles just were not working for him.
Yeah, I think that's the main story.
But still, like I've been saying it this whole season, I just don't like that free skate. The Say Something free skate, it's not just the music. There's a mismatch between the energy that he is putting out on the ice and what the music is doing. It really frustrated me at this event. It's a tough time to say, man, maybe you should chuck that thing and go back to an earlier program that works better. But I have not liked it since the beginning of the season. I adore Jason Brown. He's one of the greatest, right? Like he's such an extraordinary, wonderful skater and performer. But that free skate makes it hard for me to get excited to watch him because I just don't like it.
No, and I've seen actually quite a few people online kind of leaning towards that. Like, how about something else? And I don't know if it's too late, but we saw Nathan Chen do it. So you never know. I mean, he had I think it was a Mozart free skate in 2022, the early part of the season, and then went back to Rocket Man. And obviously that worked out for him.
Worked out well.
It was a good choice. But Jason, his short program is phenomenal. His river dance to me just continues to get better as he does it more. And the Finnish crowd obviously just ate it up like cookies. It was so tasty. But yeah, his free skate, those triple axels took the wind out of him. And after that, the program was still, to me, fairly lovely, but it still didn't have the Jason Brown excitement, enthusiasm, flow, emotion. I feel like those two mistakes in the beginning, he fought through the rest of it and did it really, really well. This is not a knock against him. It lost any emotional impact to me because I don't have the same dislike of it that you do and that intense feeling of it.
Yeah.
But also I agree, it's not exciting. And we've obviously seen a lot better material. So yeah, I'm curious to see how coming out of Finlandia, what he and his team talk through, because it was a tough one.
The one other note I would like to make about the men here is just a shout out to Andreas Nordebach.
Oh, heck yeah.
He was in 11th after the short program, but something happened. I don't know the specifics of it, but either in the warm up for the free or just before he was about to take the ice, while the previous skater was getting scored, he cut his hand and got wrapped up and took the ice with his left hand heavily bandaged and bleeding excessively to the point where he is bleeding through that bandage and his hand is just red. And he has to perform his free skate with a obvious open wound. They actually had to, send an ice marshal out to clean up the ice because there was blood on the ice.
It's wild.
Beforehand. And somehow skating it at a disadvantage where he couldn't articulate his hand in the way that he normally would and was clearly, I'm guessing is probably his fingers were going numb at a certain point from both a little bit of blood loss, but also having your hand bandaged up and it changing the way that he had to move and flow. He still has a pretty strong free skate and he's 8th in the free skate overall. So that is a testament to his training and to his grit and his determination to even continue skating at that point. Because if he had withdrawn, nobody would have batted an eye at that. Because, you're going on the ice with your hand taped up and bleeding through the wrap. That is a perfect excuse to be like, I can't do this. And he stuck it out and got it done. And man, that is an impressive bit of work.
It is. It makes me think of, and it's much less dramatic than this, but at the time Yuzo Ruhanyu skated with a bandage around his head.
Oh, yeah, that was so scary.
It was terrifying. And yet he was incredible because of course he was, because he was Yuzo. Not nearly that dramatic, but I can't imagine most skaters bailing on that program, but I can imagine them not doing nearly as well. And I am really impressed. That took a lot of guts. So great job. Before we move on to pairs, let's talk about the Grand Prix final qualifiers. No shock. First top qualifier, Ilya Malinin, obviously.
Yeah.
Yuma Kagiyama, Shun Sato, Adam Shoham-Fa does make it as the fourth qualifier. Mikhail Shidorov and Daniel Grassel from Italy squeaks in there.
Yeah, kind of surprised about that, especially considering his last performance.
Yeah, he squeaks out just ahead of Kazuki Tomono.
That's kind of a shame.
It is a deep shame.
Yeah, I really think Kazuki should be in that spot, but that's just a tiebreaker point-wise thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Lucas Bridgke and Nika Agatsi round out the substitutes. So we shall see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Pairs. The team that everyone expected to win, Minerva Haase and Nikita Volodin, did win, but by just a teeny tiny little bit.
I think this is the second Grand Prix performance in a row from Minicki, the Germans, that is very good, but not as good as they are capable of. Particularly from Nikita, there just seemed like there were some problems at this one. Notably, they essentially lose a whole death spiral.
That was in the short. Yeah, that was strange.
That's really uncharacteristic mistake.
That's one that I actually did wonder if it was associated to the ice.
The soft ice problem.
Yeah, because he just seemed to not be able to get his pick.
Yeah.
And his center for that. And they lost it. So I did wonder if the environment actually had played a factor in that.
He also has, I think in the free skate, he has kind of a freak fall. Like they get done with a jump and then he just goes down.
Yeah, it was odd.
Yeah. So it just looked like he was having a little bit of struggle. But also, this is a team that is typically just so good. They're so well
rock
matched.
Solid.
Yeah. They're really well rounded. They're great artistically. They're great technically. As a team, they're just so finely matched to each other that they're usually pretty dependable. And they're usually just like king and queen of the Grand Prix. Like they've done so well over the last few seasons in the Grand Prix. And, they win here, but it's just not quite the commanding win that I'm sure that they would like to have. And those errors, it speaks to the quality of everything else that they do, that they remain on top, even with some pretty significant problems. But they're going to definitely want to shore that up before they, move on through the season.
Yeah, because coming into this season, in my mind, they were the favorites going into the Olympics. Even though they did not win at Worlds, it was by so little. And I still do think they're on that trajectory to be on the podium for sure at the Olympics, but vying for that gold medal. And I think that's why the past two Grand Prix have just been a little surprising, because they are so good that they seem like odd mistakes. So I expect that they're going to shore it up. And we've seen them at the Grand Prix final for the past few years just kill it. So I expect them to do it again.
A big event for the Americans here, with American teams taking both second and third. So Alisa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov come in second here, which is a big deal for this team. They are our current national champions, but in many conversations thought of as kind of the second American pairs team. And they've done pretty nicely so far this season, but they just hadn't quite had like the big moment yet. That happens much more for them here. They're
100% it does.
They're in third after the short program. And let's also note that after the short, the top three teams are essentially tied.
Yes.
Haase and Volinen are in first, but they've got a 70-40. And then Ellie Kam and Danny O'Shea were in second with a 70.24. And Efimova and Mitrofanov were in third with a 70.9. So there was just nothing. That was a three, like basically the short program was a wash. Yeah. And essentially that's what happens. You start new in the free skate. And in that instance, Efimova and Mitrofanov are, of the two American teams, the one that come out on top. They get a 135.30. It's a season's best. Notably, that is 1 point and change behind the Germans in the free skate. So they're so close there. They get a 205.49 personal best, 1 point and change, 1.5 points behind the Germans again. So this is a very close bid for that podium top there from this team. And I think that's a really striking outcome for them.
And definitely surprising. I'm thrilled for them, beyond thrilled. I loved that free skate. It was so emotional and they did a brilliant job. And yes, they benefited by some pretty notable mistakes by Haase and Volinen to get there, but still a 205.49, that's huge for them. That's a great step forward and definitely makes it that much more, I want to say imperative, but really like gives them some even bigger things to point to that may help Alisa get that citizenship in time. I still don't expect that's going to happen, but the US Fed desperately wants it to.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But really nice performance from Ellie Kam and Danny O'Shea here. Second in that ever so tight short program. And they get a 128.85 in the free. They have a very nice free, a few little, problems here and there.
But Ellie is landing her throws.
Yes. Even if
second competition in a row.
Yeah. Even if there's some two-footedness here and there.
I don't care.
Whatever,
she's standing up.
She's standing up. And that's, and that's the challenge for both Alisa and Ellie. Alisa tends to land her throws, but doesn't always land her side-by-sides. And Ellie struggles with those throws, and sometimes their side-by-sides get a little wonky. Like pairs is just, it's such a blend of disciplines, and the best teams are the ones who can do everything. And what you saw from both the American teams here were better performances overall. Now, I think we got a stronger performance out of Cam and O'Shea at their previous event, but still very, very good. 199.09 gets them into that third place spot. So this is shaping up to be a pretty darn good season for Cam and O'Shea after being out with injury for a while. A really nice podium overall.
Oh,
Very
lovely
pleased with
podium.
it.
I will admit that if I had my druthers.
Your druthers?
My druthers.
I don't even know what that word means.
It's a fairly antiquated.
Is that Old English?
Maybe.
Okay.
But I love the Japanese team of Yuna Nagoka and Sumitada Moriguchi more and more. And yes, their programs were a bit messy here. They weren't as good as the last time we saw them. However, even so, they are so damn fast.
Crazy fast.
Flying. Yeah. They are such a, like we always talk about the ones to watch, team of the future. This team is going to be a world champion team. At some point in the future, they got a world title in them. They are absolutely phenomenal. They just keep getting better. I know why they are not on this podium, and I really like this podium, but man, I'm looking forward to the first time that they get a Grand Prix medal or they get a championship medal because they're on their way.
The extraordinary improvement that they've made in a season, updating their coaching situation so they're splitting time between, I think, Germany and Japan. I think that has had a pretty massive impact on them. They're so exciting. They're so energetic. Sumi has so much confidence, and he is a beast. You know, like he's just so impressive. And the more that Yuna finds her confidence, the stronger the team becomes. But I think there's like two teams of the future at this event, because I think the Japanese team are wonderful, but really the Chinese team of Zhang and Huang, they're very impressive. I mean, they're still just fresh out of juniors, and they're the secondary team behind Sui and Han, even though they're the team that locked the Olympic spot at the qualifier. And there's some refinement issues in places where you can see their thrown triples are extraordinary, and a number of those pairs elements are really, really great, but they suffer a little bit in spins and certain other areas, but they're still very impressive and they show a lot of promise. So I think an event that had both of those young teams perform pretty nicely, particularly from the Japanese team, it's just nice because
it's like after a preview.
After the last Olympics, pairs fell off for a season.
It did.
You know, it was kind of miserable for like half a season where it just felt like, is anything going to be good again for a while? And I think we have enough teams that are going to move past this quadrennial and enough young teams that are looking better all the time to have reasons to stay excited after the Olympics in pairs. And I think both of those teams are a good reason for it. But yes, I do agree. I want to throw some medals at Nagaoka and Moriguchi. I think their fans call them Unasumi because I've seen it on the Japanese signs and stuff that says Unasumi. They're a delight, and I do love that team, and I would have happily seen them get a medal as well.
Love them. All right. Grand Prix final qualifiers. Top qualifying team, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, followed closely by Sarah Conti and Nicolo Macchi and Minerva Fabian Hasse and Nikita Volodin. Also making it, Anastasia Medalkina and Luca Berilava, Diana Salato-Dudek and Maxime Deschamps, and the Hungarians, Maria Pavlova and Alexei Svievchenko.
This is the group that I would have expected. I think that, we see that Sui and Han are the first alternates, but,
they haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. But otherwise, I feel like this is kind of a rematch from a lot of the same top teams overall. Yes. And I think it's worth noting that Conti and Macchi, Hasse and Volodin, Metalkina and Berlava, and Salato-Dudek and Deschamps all have 28 points each.
Yep.
So there's a lot of like podium switching around. The only team that has been dominant this season has been Miura and Kihara. But all of these teams can suffer from inconsistency. You know, even Riku and Ryu, who are typically kind of the best team in the field, everybody has bad days sometimes.
Yes.
So, and when you have teams that are as great as, say, Metalkina and Berilava, but also who completely fall apart sometimes, you know, when we get into the preview for that, I think we're going to have a lot to dig into on pairs because anything could happen there.
I was happy to see the other two alternates being Ellie Kam and Danny O'Shea and Elisa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov. They earned that, and that's really cool. But I'll put it out there. I think that those 6 teams that qualified are the 6 teams that are going to be vying for that podium at the Olympics. So this is an absolute preview to me. Like, unlike several of the other, well, maybe all of the others, because I feel like there's a few notable people missing.
Yeah.
this really does feel like the top 6 teams in the world that are going to be the top 6 teams going forward until we hit Milan.
The only question is whether or not Sui and Han improve to the point where they feel as good as they did before.
Yes.
Because they don't look that good yet, but they are.
But they're Sui and Han. So, yes, that's the one outlier that it's like, well, we'll see.
But let's talk about what I think is the best competition at this event, and the one that outside of dance, everybody was kind of the most nervous about, because when we would talk about the bloodbath, it was like a lot of notable competitors were going to be coming into this event, deciding those Grand Prix spots. And there were a couple that it felt fairly obvious, but anything could happen, but others that were really neck and neck. And I think there's some surprises here and some not surprises, but
what I think is funny is that you've done this big prelude, but I don't think you ever said we're talking about the women.
Oh, we're talking about the women. That's the best event here is the women.
Yes.
Let's talk about the first place finish of Mona Chiba.
Mona Chiba was glorious. There's not a lot to say other than she was fantastic. She made a tiny, tiny error in the short program that cost her a few points. And what I loved was her face at the end of her short program where she made this little grimace like, damn it.
Yeah.
Because that face tells you, I came here to win and I might have just given it up. However, she had a phenomenal free skate, like nearly flawless. And I loved her reaction at the end of it.
It's fantastic. Her reaction as she finishes it up is so aggressively excited.
It goes from this exquisite, elegant, delicate, gorgeous program, and then a pump of the fist, like, yeah. Like, it's like you see the inner competitive athlete come out.
Yeah, she gets a little aggro for a minute.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the juxtaposition. It's awesome.
Yeah, I just find it so entertaining. You could note that I think she gets away with a cue that doesn't get called.
Yeah, probably. But she won by 4 points. So I don't know that it would have mattered.
I don't know that it would have mattered. Because it was definitely the best performance of the night.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the thing with Mona Chiba is that she jumps low and fast. And I think that there are times where she doesn't get reviews because it looks clean in the moment. And if you go back and actually check it out, you can see that she does have cues and under rotations. And I think of all of the women skaters, she's probably the one who gets away with it the most just because of the way her jump technique works. But regardless, I only saw the one cue. And I saw somebody online say that they thought that she got away with an under rotation. I didn't see it. And that would have affected the score. But
that would have been bigger, yes.
Yeah, but the performance overall was spectacular. She completely wins the moment in the free skate.
But the moment belonged to Amber Glenn in the short.
Absolutely. Amber Glenn's short program is awesome. I mean, triple axel totally nails it.
I love that moment right before the let the choir sing, because I know that you always kind of feel like you wish the choreo was more.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, it's Amber. It's her face. It's when she looks out to the crowd and invites them in. It just brings me joy every time I see it because it looks like it brings her joy.
There's still just something choreographically in that Like a Prayer program that I feel like is just a little clunky in that section in the lead up to the kind of the big emotional crescendo, joyful moment of it. And I can't quite put my finger on what it is other than I just think it doesn't quite come together the way I'd like to see it. However, Amber's performance quality is terrific. Her jumps are so on point there. It's really nice. It's just when she gets to the free skate, and she's still great in the free skate.
She's fantastic in the free.
She doubles her Lutz and loses the combo off the end of it.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, really.
That, and she definitely had a few cues in there as well, because she was a little tight. Like, she's been on antibiotics and had sinusitis into a tooth infection like last week, and she's still on antibiotics. And she talked about how in the short program it actually weirdly kind of made her very zen, very like chill, so she wasn't nervous at all, like almost too casual.
Yeah, she looked super chill when she took the ice for the short program, and when she got off the ice after the performance, you can hear her say to her coach, I could just go out and do a whole nother short program. She doesn't look winded. I mean, she's so conditioned that she comes off of that really nicely.
But in the free, I feel like it's the opposite, where it's like you feel that slight deflation from the moment it starts. Like, she's just a little teeny bit slower, just a little bit more hesitant.
Well, the thing that happens in the free skate is that she takes her opening position and she's got the Amber game face, and then she loses her footing.
Oh, yeah. She has like a little teeny tiny like check.
It's a quarter-second problem, but her like blade slips and you see her kind of jerk and she gets it back together. But you've got a close-up of her in that moment and you see her face go, and then the music starts. And it could be absolutely nothing, but like we know that the beginning of a program can have a pretty big impact on a skater and your concentration can be affected by anything.
Yeah.
And so it feels like in that moment, it just jars her. And again, because I'm going to blame everything on the soft ice, I'm just like, was it too soft and your toe pick slipped or something in your opening position? And I could read too much into that, but even watching it just felt like, oh, that doesn't bode well. It's just like that tiny thing. But most of the program is terrific. She just doesn't have quite the artistic flow that like Moni has.
She was just in the zone. She really was. And the number may show like a 4-point difference. I think it was closer than that. But that said, I think Amber, I liked listening to her talk about the competition after, because she mentioned this is the first Grand Prix she hasn't won in a while. Where, this
because she was undefeated on the Grand Prix circuit last year.
Right. And she won her first one this year. And she didn't like it. Like
losing sucks.
And that's the thing I loved hearing from her, because and it was no shade at all to Moni, because she even called that out, which I also loved. She was like, Moni killed it and absolutely deserved to win this. That's from Amber. But I liked her saying like 2 years ago, even at the beginning of last year, she would have been like, second place here. This is great. And now she's like, I want to win. And that is the right mentality. That is fantastic to hear from Amber at this point in the season, going towards the final, going towards nationals, going towards the Olympics. You want to hear her confidently talking about like, I don't like to lose. Good. It's the same reason I like seeing a pumped up Moni at the end of her program, like pumping her fist because she wants to win. It's me reading Kaori Sakamoto talking about how like she is absolutely going for that gold medal. That is what she wants. I like hearing this from the ladies, just being like, no, I'm not here for second. I'm going for first. I want to hear that from all of them.
Yeah, I want that fight and fire. It's terrific. Yeah. If there is a true delight outside of Moni's free, though, it is a third place bronze finish for Rino Matsuike from Japan. Rino is a skater's skater, right? Like she is renowned now for having just like the best edges in the business. Jumps are not necessarily always her friend, but her artistry, her flow, her musicality, it is extraordinary.
Her joy.
Oh my gosh. She is human sunshine. When we were watching her free or right afterwards, you said that like she feels like essentially the newer version of Mai Mihara.
Like the heir apparent.
Yeah. Because Mai, we just haven't really seen the last 2 seasons. And I've talked before how like Mai is one of my absolute favorite skaters and has probably my favorite short program of all time. She is such a delight, but dealing with injury and stuff, she just has not been a factor. And Rino has kind of stepped in to be that human sunshine element. But she's 6th after the short program. And that kind of jump isn't unheard of, but it is a nice jump from 6th into 3rd, but it's on the power of an absolutely gorgeous free skate. She gets a 131.95. That's a season's best for her there. There are some problems on the jumps. There's definitely some under rotations and some little issues here and there. But when it comes to just quality and beauty, Rino's free is magnificent.
It was, to me, that was actually the skate of the day. It was breathtaking. 4th place, Brady Tennell. I think she did really, really well here. She was 4th in the short, 4th in the free, consistent. Again, had some under rotation issues, as Brady often does.
Yeah, the Q is what really brought her down. The Qs are why she's in 4th, why she's not on that podium.
Right,
yeah.
Because otherwise, if it would have been interesting to be in that audience and see if they were surprised that she wasn't higher up. But I mean, whenever you look at Rino as well, it's the same idea. So, I mean, I do feel like Rino absolutely earned that bronze medal.
I think Brady knew coming off the ice. I don't think she was surprised at all in the kiss and cry that she dropped below. I don't think that came as a surprise. And also, Brady was in 4th after the short program. So it was, the fight trying to get on that podium.
Yeah.
I think that she kind of knew that what she did wasn't quite enough. She was only behind by like 3 points. And
it was a nice showing from her, though.
It was. And it's still like, it's been a showcase this year that Brady is that skater that you can't count out. And there's just no better spins in the business. I mean,
her spins are phenomenal. But what was interesting is after the short program in third place was Madeline Skizis from Canada. She fell to fifth in the free and then fifth overall, but it wasn't disastrous. I think she overall did really well. This, I think, is her highest international score of the season with a 188.60. She might have had one that was a little higher, but I think it might be her season's best. But regardless, super solid. Fifth place finish here, I think, is certainly better than her last Grand Prix. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And notable that, like you said, she's in third after the short. And I think most of us who are used to Maddie rarely having two good programs back to back didn't expect her to hold that, especially against higher powered technicals. But she goes into that free, and I think that her first two jumping passes have problems. And oftentimes when we've seen that happen to Maddie, a program just completely falls apart.
Yes.
And she did not let that happen here.
No, she fought very hard through that whole thing. And I mean, I'm glad she brought back the Lion King short program because it's obvious that that program delights her so much.
Yes.
I also really appreciated hearing that the choreography for her free skate, she's been working to make sure that it's more authentic to Chinese culture.
Yeah.
And so working with, you know, a choreographer that helps with that. So that's very respectful. And I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, you love to see it.
Yes. So I was happy to see this here from her, and it gives me hope, and I hope it sends her towards the rest of her season in a very positive way.
When we talk about skaters of the future, like we were talking about in the pairs, I think this event has one of those when we look at Finland's Aida Karhunen. I may not have gotten that name right, so I apologize if I'm not saying the last part right. But we've been seeing Aida for a little while. I mean, she's like fresh out of juniors, and the first time that we spotted her in juniors, she was impressive.
Yeah, I mean, she lights up that little button in you where you're like, oh, keep an eye on her.
Yeah, this is somebody with a point of view, a lot of talent.
Someone who it does blink choreography.
At the beginning of her short program.
Incredible.
Yeah. It's pretty quirky, but fun.
But it's committed.
It is committed. And she was in ninth after the short, but she had a really strong free skate. So she was sixth in the free, which brought her up to sixth overall, which put her on top of the Finnish women who were in this competition. And she's just really impressive. There's obviously a lot to work on, but she just seems like one of those people that they're probably going to send to the Olympics, and she doesn't have like a shot of big success there. I mean, it feels unlikely anyway, but it feels like a great opportunity for her to get experience to lead into that next quadrennial where she could become a really significant threat. So she's definitely keep an eye on her because there's a lot of promise.
There's two other people I want to talk about before we wrap this up and talk a little bit about Warsaw. Ryan Sumiyoshi. She was the other person who I really thought was going to make the podium here. I mean, I'd say the short program was unfortunate. The free program was a disaster.
Yeah. I mean, she had 3 falls in the free. That gets you a -4 deduction and just really wipes out your point total.
It was heartbreaking.
And but she also had a tough fall in the short. It was the kind of fall that looks like you're going to be feeling it the next day. And I don't know if that had any impact on her.
And it was such a fluke fall. It was like a weird, bizarre thing. So yeah, that could definitely have had an impact.
And it's such a shame because Ryan is a terrific skater. She's in that really tough lineup of Japanese women that is just like such an enormous talent pool. But I love her perspective. I love her outfits. I love the things that she skates to. That free skate's one of my favorite of the season. I love it. That Pure Moods Ariama's program that she obviously loves, but it just didn't work here. And it's so frustrating because I feel like Ryan is one of those skaters that unfortunately seems to run into those problems at just the wrong moment. You know, like over and over again, we've seen her almost rise to the challenge and then just fall off just before she could hit really great success. And I'm hoping that she can course correct that and that this isn't too much of a setback for her. But man, it was tough to see how devastated she was.
It was. Also, not having their best day, Luna Hendricks was here and was definitely a threat for the podium. She had a miserable short program, was in 10th, and then posted on social media that she just hadn't been feeling well, was skating anyway, and had to prioritize her health and withdrew before the free skate.
Yeah,
so,
after that short program, I was not surprised that she withdrew.
She did not look like herself at all.
It did not look good. Of course, this is not what we wanted to see from her. Like in the middle of her comeback, you know, she's got a little bit of time to do some course corrections.
And hopefully just heal up and feel better before Europeans.
Yeah, definitely.
So that leaves us with the official Grand Prix final qualifiers. Top qualifier is Mona Chiba.
Yeah,
So
2 golds. So she's the one rocking the most points and has been the most consistent this season.
Right behind her with 28 points each, Kaori Sakamoto, Amber Glenn, and Alyssa Liu. Rounding out the top 6, Ami Nakai, and a very excited right now, Rinka Watanabe.
Yeah, so Rinka squeaks into that spot, which is really exciting, especially I think for everybody who felt that she kind of got robbed last week at Skate America. The fact that she does make it to the Grand Prix final anyway is a big deal. I'm a big fan of Rinka, so I'm excited to see her here. We've got 4 Japanese women and 2 American women. Last year we had 5 Japanese women and 1 American woman, and Amber beat them all.
I don't know that we're going to see that again here, but it's going to be real interesting. We'll find out.
Yes, I think this is a super compelling lineup.
Rinka could always surprise you, but the other 5, it's a toss-up. I have no idea. They've all been strong in different ways. They've all had bad days. So my brain says Kaori, and then we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun digging into this in the preview. I think there's a lot to dive into there. But when we look at the alternates, first alternate is Isabella Vito. Second is Anastasia Gubanova. And then Brady Snell actually comes in as the third alternate.
I think Isabeau was expected. The other 2 are that's really good for them.
Yes.
It's really solid.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Okay. So before we talk about Warsaw Cup, since we've actually seen all of Finlandia and we have not seen any of Warsaw Cup, let's pick gold in our heart from what we have actually viewed. So, Adrian, who's gold in your heart this week?
Oh my gosh, this is a really tough one, and it could go a couple of different ways, but I think that I'm going to give it to Roman Sadovsky.
Nice.
His free skate in the men's, like I said earlier, was my favorite thing in that event. The top 3 men's free skates just paled in comparison afterwards. Even if they beat him scores wise, I thought he had the best performance. It was one of the things that I enjoyed the most. Roman was terrific there. It was just such a testament to the quality that he brings and the artistry and the emotional component. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
I'm giving it to Yuka and Yuho because they make me smile. Like there are probably more deserving of the gold in my heart based on their specific performances and all that. No, Yuka Urahara and Yuho Pirinen, they are so special in the most quirky, specific theater kid way. And I want them all the time at every competition, just all the time. So yes, They are gold in my heart.
The toss-up for me was Roman or Rino Matsuike, because Rino was just absolutely divine as well. It's so hard to pick, but you got to go with your gut. And for me, the gut was Roman.
All right. Warsaw Cup. So reiterating, we haven't seen this. However, what I did see little previews of and read about was the women's competition where Sarah Maud Dupuis of Canada took her first international gold medal. Congrats to Sarah, because holy cow, that's amazing. And got personal best as well on top of it. I'm so excited about this for her. Oh, and she became the first Canadian woman to ever land a successful triple axel in international competition.
Yeah, so she lands a fully rotated triple axel, personal best in the short, in the free. She gets a 185.66 total. That's a really nice total. That's really good for her.
Like 3 points difference from her and what Maddie Skizis did at the Grand Prix Finland. So very interesting.
I don't think she was against a very strong or deep field here, but still, those are terrific performances from her. And as a Sarah Maud fan, I am just, I'm thrilled that she takes home that kind of hardware. Last year, Catherine Medlin-Spence won that event. So that's, 2 straight Canadian wins at Warsaw, which is pretty nice. That's a cool trend to have.
It's very cool. Also, what I think is pretty cool in the men's event, we have Vladimir Samoliev from Poland winning in the Warsaw Cup. So I thought taking that over Lukas Brycki, the European champion, is not nothing. That's really cool. I'm really stoked for him.
In the pairs, we see several notable teams here. Salado Dudek and Deschamps from Canada take the top spot over Vipinlaw, Digby, and McBeath and Parkman. So the Brits and the Americans, who were quite a ways back from them. So for Deanna and Max, a pretty strong showing.
I'm glad that they went and just got some more miles on those programs ahead of Grand Prix final, because I think that was probably in the back of their minds. Like, okay, we know we're going. Let's get like some more exposure for this so they could work out more of the kinks.
Yeah. The contrast of events is looking at what happened in the ice dance at Finlandia versus the ice dance at Warsaw Cup, because here you have every team in the top 3 gets season's best, and you get a second place finish from Lim and Quan, which is amazing. But the event is won by the French team La Pareva and Berceau. They get a season's best in their rhythm dance with an 80-46, in the free dance with a 121-60, and in the overall with a 202-06. Really strong performance from that French team. So while you have one French team upset with their scores at Finlandia, you have La Pareva and Berceau, who have, I think, won this event a couple of times in a row.
Oh yeah, they've said that this is like their event and they love it.
Yeah.
They're always going to skate here forever.
Yeah. And understandably, if you keep on winning, you want to keep being there.
When you put it into perspective of Finlandia, their score is almost tied with what Piper and Paul got.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that's encouraging.
Yeah. And, I like it when I see scores that put some respect on La Pareva and Berceau, because they're a terrific team. In second, though, you get the young Koreans, Hana Lim and Ye Kwan. They're 12 points back from La Pareva and Berceau, but this is still
a personal best.
A personal best score for them, and puts them just ahead of the American team Green and Parsons, who traditionally you would think of as the stronger team, and they get season's best here in their scores as well. So with a 189.27, they're just 1 point back from the Korean team. So it's very, very close between those two.
Yeah. And I mean, I love Lim and Kwan's programs this season.
Yes.
I just think they're both super strong. That Men in Black rhythm dance
so good.
is
I love it.
good. Yeah. I love it. I'm thrilled for them. Again, team of the future.
Yes.
Watch out.
Definite team of the future. But for Green and Parsons, this is the season for them trying to make that Olympic team and the American conversation. Before, you would have said that it was Chalk and Bates and CPOM and then everybody else fighting for that third spot. But
I don't think that's where we're at anymore.
I don't think that's the case right now. Yeah.
I think that those 3 teams are going to be like, we're going to use the word bloodbath again.
Yeah.
Like those 3 teams are going to be fighting.
Yeah, it's going to get sticky. Okay, that wraps up our coverage of the Grand Prix qualifiers. And so next week, we're going to be doing our Grand Prix final preview, probably right after we are stuffed from Thanksgiving here in the States. And it's going to be an opportunity to kind of really dig through everything that's happened earlier in the season and see how all of these skaters and teams match up against each other and try to make some level of prediction. That's going to be hard.
That's going to be relatively impossible, but we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we could, at least in the men's, I can be like Ilya Malinin.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is going to happen, but Ilya Malinin.
I feel like every season I get like one really good, outlandish, but successful prediction. And I've already had it when I picked the women's podium at Grand Prix de France with Ami Nakai winning. So
you're never letting that one go.
No, I'm not, because I mean, that one was a real score. But then going into this one, man, gosh, I don't know. Like we
got a week to think about it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put some heavy thought into it. So you've just gotten all of our heavy thoughts, including an extremely extensive ice dance conversation and rule conversation at the beginning. So we're really curious about all of you. Like, what
do you hate us now?
Like, I mean, emotions are running high when it comes to the season in general, because of scoring, because of the Olympics, because of comebacks. We're seeing some people who are faltering a little bit this season and other people making surprise come-ups. The Olympic season is always wild, and this one is pretty wild.
Oh, it is.
But not always for the right reasons. And I think that weighs heavy on everybody to a degree. So yeah, I'd be very curious on all of you. Like, what was your take on this event? How did you feel about the scoring? And I also know that a lot of our listeners don't watch every one of these events, don't really pay attention to ice dance at all, or they don't pay attention to men's or whatever. So it's going to be a kind of a mixed bag, but we'd love to know your thoughts. Let us know how you're reacting to the current scoring. Are you finding it frustrating as a fan? Look forward to that Grand Prix final preview. And for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we will talk to you next time.
Bye.